Hey, welcome to Flatirons Online. We're so glad you joined us today. We're in a series called Would You Rather. All this series is taking a look at all the little decisions that we make every single day and what Jesus has to say about them. I'm so glad you joined us. If you have questions, please find us online, flatironschurch.com, or all across the social media platforms. We're so glad that you're with us today to see what Jesus has to say about Would You Rather.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. My name's Ben Foote. I'm the teaching pastor here. If you've been here 1,000 times or it's your first time, genuinely, I'm glad you're here and welcome. There's something I need to address right off the bat, which is this. It's very important. So earlier in this week, one of my really good friends, Cole Willard, he's the campus pastor at our Aurora campus. We're talking and hanging out, and he mentions to me that I wear a lot of grout fits, which apparently is an outfit that has a lot of gray in it, which is funny because it's true. So then this week I decide, you know what? I'm gonna wear like the darkest charcoal pants I have. And then, next week I'll just go up to Cole and be like, I really upped my grout fit game this week. The joke has backfired because the way our cameras and screens work, it just looks like I'm wearing purple pants. It looks like I'm celebrating the life of Prince up here. It also, for some reason, just seeing me in purple pants, I just want to do moves, and I can't dance, but anyway, joke's on me. I'm Ben. I promise I don't wear purple pants, not even today, but glad you're here. So let's jump into this. So we're in the middle of this series where we're wrapping up our study of the Sermon on the Mount, all right? Sermon on the Mount, delivered by Jesus, most famous sermon ever given, delivered by God himself. It took him 20 minutes to say out loud. It took us 9 months to just unpack it together. But we're at the end of the Sermon on the Mount now. And at the end, Jesus kind of gives the application of everything that he's taught so far. And he breaks it down into choices that you and I have to make. Right? He's not going to make these choices for us. And so he gives us a list of would you rather scenarios. Right? Last weekend, if you were here or you remember, we talked about Jesus' first would you rather scenario. And the first one was, would you rather be judged, or would you rather have someone come up and ask you if they can be a part of your life? It's a good question. And then today I want to talk about Jesus' second would you rather, where he says, would you rather take the wide road or the narrow road? Right, some of us don't know what that means yet. We don't understand the metaphor yet. I'll explain it. But before I jump into explaining it, I want to tell you a story. It's a story that I think will help get us in the right mind frame and the right imagination to grasp what Jesus is teaching us today. So I love hiking, all right? I don't claim to be an expert on it or anything. I just love it. I love getting away from the jam-packed schedule and the chaos and the noise. I love being able to carry literally everything I need for days at a time, like on my back. I also love, and I probably need counseling for this, but I also really do love the pain and suffering and hardship and filth that comes with a really difficult hike. Some of you, there's a select few of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. You probably need counseling with me. But there's something about being sore and being tired and smelling like a dumpster that really makes me feel like I earned something on the trail. Like I really did something. I love it. All right, probably my most memorable hike, my favorite one, was 13 years ago. And this is when my dad and I hiked a portion of the Appalachian Trail. If you're unfamiliar, Appalachian Trail is one of the longest trails in America. It's 2,200 miles long. It goes from Georgia all the way up to Maine. We didn't do the whole thing, of course. We just did the Georgia section of the trail. It's this brutal 79-mile stretch that took us 9 days to hike because we were wholly unprepared for how hard it was going to be. It's just up and up and up and endless stair climbs in 1,000% Georgia humidity in July. It was awesome. And I just got a lot of fond memories from that hike, like memories I'll carry with me to my deathbed, Like I'll never forget the time we finally made it to the top of Blood Mountain, which is a great name for a mountain. And it was our first real scenic view. It was our first reward on this grueling hike. And just as far as the eye can see, it's rolling blue and green mountains. It was beautiful. I remember one evening we came across a rattlesnake that had just shed its skin. And my dad is like, oh, rattlesnakes are blind when they shed their skin. We should mess with it. And so we did. We poked it with sticks and it rattled and it hissed and it reared and all that good stuff, which by the way, don't ever do that. I later found out that rattlesnakes are actually not totally blind when they shed their skin, and they're actually more aggressive. So amazing we're alive. My favorite memory of this hike by far is this. One day we stopped for lunch at a stream. We're exhausted. We strip down to our boxers and just lay on the ground because we're hot and tired, and we just moan in pain. I lean up at one point to grab a drink of water, and I realize that we are literally just 20 feet from this massive black bear that's drinking out of a stream. First bear I've ever seen in my life. I'm scared, and so I freeze, and I whisper, I'm like, Dad, what do we do? There's a bear. And then like Chris Farley or something, he shoots up and he goes, grab the camera. Which startled the bear greatly. And so the bear like looks at us with this look of like, should I eat these jokers or not? And so this scares both of us. What is my dad's reaction to this fear? True story. He just starts shouting like Tarzan and throwing rocks at it. What is my reaction to my dad? I just join in because I don't know what to do. And we had to have looked like completely crazy people, two dudes in their underwear, shouting, beating our chests, throwing rocks at a 500-pound black bear. But it worked. You know, he ran away, didn't eat us. I lived to tell the tale. That was one of my favorite, that is my favorite memory from that hike. I mean, if you've ever been that close to a bear, they're just like, they're powerful, like cool, majestic creatures. It's my favorite memory. And I got a lot of memories of that hike. I could, go on and on. I won't. But at the same time, it wasn't all great. It was very hard, very difficult. And still to this day, it's the hardest hike I've ever been on. And I've been on a lot of hard hikes. I've been to the top of Long's Peak. It doesn't touch this. And the reason this hike was so hard was because of the lack of water. All right, you gotta remember it's 13 years ago. So it's before iPhones had been invented. So we don't have GPS on an iPhone. We had a little Nokia brick phone. Some of us remember those. You had to light a coal fire and turn a crank to send a text message. Thing's useless, so it's turned off. It's in our backpack. I did bring a GPS device, which at the time was the size of like an industrial toaster, but that thing was unreliable too, and so it was mostly turned off. When it came to knowing where we were, we rolled old school. Right? We had a map and we had a compass, and we weren't even really sure how the two went together. And so we're in the middle of nowhere, no GPS, and we're relying on these little blue lines that cross the trail on the map, indicators of where there's supposed to be rivers and creeks and streams, places to filter more water. Well, on July 4th, this is about halfway through our hike, we wake up and we pack up our gear, fill up our Nalgene's, and we go hiking. And the map says that a couple miles down the trail, we're gonna find a stream. Well, we get to this stream, and there's nothing there, all dried up. And we've already had all of the water in our Nalgene's. And we're like, well, it's okay. The map says there's another stream a mile down the trail, let's go. We get there to that stream, nothing there, all dried up. Starting to get a little worried. We go, okay, there's another stream here. Keep hiking, all dried up. Keep hiking, all dried up, all dried up, all day long. And we never found water that entire day. Now, I don't know if you've ever been legit dehydrated, like medically dehydrated, It's awful. Like, first of all, you can't stay awake. Your body just shuts down. So I'm walking and like falling asleep at the same time. You get these lightning strike headaches, and every muscle begins to ache and throb, even muscles you didn't know you had, You're like, my hair muscles hurt today. Your throat gets dry like sandpaper, and you get obsessed with water. Like, it's all you can think about. So that night, we set up camp and we collapsed. We had hiked from sun up to sundown in 100-degree heat with no water. We're dehydrated, we're exhausted, and we hate hiking. It's my favorite thing in the world. In that moment, I absolutely hate it. I don't want the trail, I want the highway. I don't want to walk, I want to drive. I don't want my sleeping bag, I want a bed. And I don't want the crappy food in my backpack, I want the fine cuisine of a local Chili's bar and grill or something like that. Now, of course, I'm still alive today, right? And that's because the next day we wake up and we did finally come across a river. That's a whole story in and of itself that I won't tell right now. But we did find water. We swam in it. We drank gallons of it, and it was like heaven on earth. But here's the reason I'm telling the story. Is because in that moment, I was thinking to myself, screw the trail, right? Forget this. Give me the path of least resistance. You know, if I could have, I would have teleported off the mountain and just gone back home. I wish we had never set one foot down the trail in the first place. But also the truth is that the only reason my dad and I are able to share and carry all of those memories and rewards to this day is simply because we kept hiking. We didn't quit. We didn't give up when we were dehydrated and hitch a ride into town. Instead, we stuck with it. We leaned into the hardship. And now on the back end, of course, I'm very glad I did. Because those rewards and those memories, they only came as a result of the resistance of the trail. The unforgiving climbs, the 70-pound backpacks, the heat, dehydration, the hunger, all of it led to the mountaintop rewards. And here's the truth. We all have something like this. You have something like this. Here's mine. But the truth is that if you want to stand in awe on the top of Blood Mountain, and if you want to have the chance to come within 20 feet of one of those like majestic black bears, there's only one way that you're going to get there. You have to put on some boots and strap on a backpack and get hiking. You won't ever see the view from the top of Blood Mountain if you choose the path of least resistance. You can't get that view from your car on the highway. And I could spend all day trying to describe it to you. It wouldn't do it justice. You will never be able to experience it unless you just go to Georgia and you hike that brutal hike. And the universal truth that I'm trying to get at right now is that the most difficult trails are the ones that lead to the greatest rewards. And that's just true. And of course, I'm not just talking about hiking anymore. I'm talking about real life. The most difficult trails are the ones that lead to the greatest rewards. Unfortunately, though, we live in a culture that is obsessed with the idea of ease and immediate gratification. Right? We live in a culture that goes, choose the path of least resistance every time. Why wouldn't you? And I don't exclude myself from that. I'm all caught up in it too. I don't want to go to a movie theater to watch a movie. I want to watch it on Netflix now. And I want Amazon Prime to ship me my book today. I want DoorDash to bring me my own takeout food now. Whatever I want it now, and I want it with the most ease possible. If I don't have to leave my couch, that's preferable. But that spills over into real life real fast, doesn't it? Right? What do you mean I got to work real hard? I want the raise and promotion now. What do you mean marriage and relationships? Right? Like I want whoever I want, and I want him or her now. What do you mean raise my kids? I just want them to behave now. And when we end up believing that the really good things in life, like the best rewards, when we believe that they're going to come to us with ease and immediate gratification, we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment. Got skewed expectations. See, the lie that you can easily and quickly receive the best rewards in life is just that. It's a lie. And that's because the greatest rewards always lie at the end of the most difficult trails. And it's like for some reason, when it comes to athleticism or skill building, we understand that time and resistance lead to the reward. We even understand that time and resistance are part of the reward itself somehow. Like we understand that we're not going to lose the weight or get ripped overnight. It'll take time. It'll take resistance. You're just going to have to lift the heavy weight and run until you drop. And we know you're not going to become Van Halen overnight. You got to play the scales over and over again and build up the calluses on your fingers. We understand that. But then when it comes to real life and the really, really great stuff in life, our marriages and relationships, our kids, our jobs, our maturity, our wisdom, our happiness, we want it easy and we want it now. And then when those things don't come easily or immediately, we get disappointed or we even think that we're failures. And whenever we feel that way, it's because we've forgotten a universal truth. Everybody knows this to be true. The most difficult trails lead to the greatest rewards. And I believe that that is exactly what Jesus is getting at in these two short verses that I want to talk about today. So let's look at these together. So Jesus, as he's wrapping up his Sermon on the Mount, he says this. He goes, enter through the narrow gate. All right, so wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction. And unfortunately, many enter through it. But then small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So Jesus gives us a metaphor. He gives us a word picture, and he goes, there's two roads you can walk down in this life. All right, the first one is wide. To help our brains picture it, let's think of a highway. It's fast and it's easy and you got options, lots of ramps and lots of stops. All right, the other road you can take in this life is narrow. It's more like a hiking trail. And you don't have a lot of options. And it's gonna take you way more time, and it's gonna be a little more difficult. And Jesus says that the highway leads to destruction and the trail leads to life. And so what is the point of his metaphor? What's he getting at? And I think there's at least two answers to that question. I think there's at least two things that Jesus is trying to teach us right now. Let's talk about the first one. The first one has to do with life after our funerals. It has to do with heaven or hell in the traditional sense. And the wide road, the highway, is a metaphor for the millions of options a person has when it comes to who or what we place our faith in. All right, the highway just has so many options. And so believe in whatever feels right to you, and then just switch lanes if it's not working out, if you don't like it anymore. So yesterday I believed in karma, but then, now I took this ramp over to this other highway. Now I believe in the endless pursuit of pleasure. Or now I believe in this religion, but then I switched lanes and changed a few things, and now I believe in that religion. Now I've switched lanes entirely. I don't believe there is any such thing as objective truth. There are a million options in which a person can choose to place their faith. A multi-lane highway filled with ramps that lead to other offshooting highways. You got options, and so you do you. Right? And seek and find your own truth and make your own rules. Because Jesus cares deeply about us, he warns us and he goes, that highway leads to destruction. It leads to death after your funeral, and Jesus doesn't want that for us. And so Jesus says, don't take the highway, with the millions of misleading options. Instead, take the narrow road. The narrow road leads to life after your funeral. The narrow road, the trail. Right away, though, let me explain and point out what Jesus does not mean. What he does not mean when he says the road to life is narrow and only a few find it. All right, first of all, he can't mean it's narrow in the sense that life is like a spiritual balance beam. Like this tightrope act where you have to take every step with extreme precaution and perfection, right? Meaning, like yesterday was pretty good. I didn't do anything boneheaded. I'm still on the tightrope. But today, oops, I lashed out. I did the thing I told my family I'd never do again. Fill in the blank with whatever you're wrestling with. And so now I've misstepped and I fell off the tightrope. And so now I'm going to hell. Then I got to figure out some way to get back up on the tightrope and earn my way back up there. It can't be what he means. Goes against everything the Bible and Jesus have to say about grace and the fact that we can't earn our way into heaven. And so when Jesus says the road is narrow, he can't mean that life is a spiritual tightrope act. Also, when Jesus says the road is narrow and only a few find it, he's not being exclusive. He's not saying, I've invited a few people into this life and the rest of you can go to hell, and you will. He's not saying that. The Bible is also very clear that Jesus offers himself to all tongues and tribes and nations and people. Everyone is invited into this life, whether or not you accept the invitation. So what is Jesus getting at when he says the road to life after our funerals, the road to, heaven, is narrow and only a few find it? Well, he's just being clear and honest with us. And he's saying there are not a million options to get there, like the highway. Instead, there is only one trail and there's only one option, and that is through me. That's through Jesus. In another part of the Bible, he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. Only Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. Jesus is the trail and the map and the mountaintop. And the only way you're going to have a relationship with God before or after your funerals is if you go through him. He's saying the road to life is narrow. There's only one option, and it's through Jesus. So that's one of the things he's teaching us when he gives us this would you rather scenario. Would you rather take the highway or the trail? He's talking about life after our funerals. He's not just talking about life after our funerals, though. He's also talking about life before our funerals. We talk about this all the time in here, but Jesus doesn't just care about where you go when you die. Like, he promises to give us abundant, a better life in the here and now, like today in Colorado in 2019. And so the other thing that Jesus is teaching us right now has to do with life before our funerals, today. And this goes back to the path of least resistance thing I was talking about earlier. Let me explain, and let's keep using Jesus' metaphor. So a highway, the wide road, a highway is a road of ease and immediate gratification, right? You can get to your destination easily. There's no stoplights, there's no stop signs, just wide open road and plenty of lanes to cram plenty of cars in. You can get there easily. You can also get to your destination quickly. 70 miles an hour for as far as the eye can see. And not only is it easy and it's quick, but there's stops all along the way to satisfy your every whim and your every desire, right? You hungry? Well, pull over. There's a Burger King. You tired? Pull over. There's a Red Roof Inn. Are you bored? Pull over. I'm sure there's a bowling alley with laser tags somewhere nearby. But when you're bored on the wide road, that's what leads to some real destruction, right? How bored are you? Because, the bar's over there and the strip club's over there. The wide road, the highway, is a metaphor for living life on the path of least resistance. If it's difficult or hard, skip it. If it requires patience and delaying your gratification, skip it. Instead, get what you want, even if it's a cheap version of you want. Just get it easily and get it fast. And according to Jesus, the path of least resistance leads to destruction. Destruction before your funeral. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. It might take weeks or months or years of driving down this highway, but Jesus promises that eventually you will reach the destination, and the destination will destroy you. And we just know this is true, whether you believe in the Jesus stuff or not. In fact, I was watching this documentary a couple nights ago. It's really good. It's also really brutal, and it's brutally honest. It's about the culture of decadence that we have in America right now. And one of the guys they follow throughout the course of the documentary, he's a former hedge fund manager. He had made over $800 million between the 80s and 90s. So he's getting close to me. I hope to make that by selling all my baseball cards soon. But he made over $800 million between the 80s and the 90s. He lived fast. He lived for himself. His sole focus was to make more money so he could buy more things, and he wanted all of it, and he wanted it now. At the end of this documentary, though, he gets all choked up. All right, the documentary was filmed recently, and so since the 90s, he had lost his job, he had lost all of his money, he had lost his family, and he had spent a few years in prison, and now he's utterly alone. And he looks at the camera and he says, and remember, this is not a Christian documentary by any means, social commentary. So he looks at the camera and he goes, hey, so anyone who says, if I only had more money, if I only had more money, I could buy the things that I need and it would make the people around me happy and I would have security. He goes, anyone who says that is someone who has not made as much money as I have. And he goes, because I made a lot of money and I learned that it can't buy me anything and everything, and it can't buy me anything important. And he goes, I can't buy my ex-wife back. I can't pay my kids to talk to me again. There's not enough money in the world for that. I invested in the wrong things. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, we might be scared to admit it, but we know this is true. The wide road, the path of least resistance, the get it now and get it fast. Get what you want, even if it's a cheap version of what you want. We know that path leads to destruction. It destroys everything and everyone around us, and Jesus doesn't want that for us because he cares about us. Jesus is being good when he gives us this warning at the end of his Sermon on the Mount. He's not trying to give us rules, just to show off his power and authority. He's being good. He's not trying to rob us of joy and pleasure. He's trying to spare us from unnecessary pain and suffering. And so Jesus simply reminds us of something we already know to be true deep down inside. He reminds us that the most difficult trails in life are the ones that lead to the greatest rewards, the things you're looking for in the first place. So lean into the difficulty, not away from it. And when we live that way, Jesus says we're walking the narrow road. The trail. It's narrow in the sense that we've eliminated the distractions and we're narrowly focused on what Jesus says is good and true and right. And we're trusting his promise that this trail leads to just a better life for me, here and now. And so let me challenge us with something, and then I'm gonna try and take this out of metaphor world and into real life. So here's a challenge. It's a question I think we should ask ourselves honestly, which goes like this. Where are we taking the path of least resistance? Where are we tapping out when we should keep fighting? Where are we shutting up when we should speak up? Where are we sitting down when we should just keep going, keep hiking? I'll give you mine right now, just to be honest with you. I think maybe I've talked about this one other time, but I think I take the path of least resistance with my kids a lot. I give myself a bunch of reasons and excuses for why. I'm really tired, and 3 kids was crazier than I ever thought it was gonna be, and I just need some rest. And so I take the path of least resistance. I do whatever's easiest in the moment. I just turn on the TV and brainwash them with Peppa Pig or whatever, It's just easier than investing the time and energy to get on the floor and play with them. Other times I'll just give them what they want when they whine for it. In the moment, it's just easier than trying to teach them patience and respect. Other times, at bedtime after a long day, I'll just say goodnight, turn off the light, close the door, skip the prayers, skip the book reading, skip the whole bedtime ritual we have at our house because I'm tired and this is easier. This is the path of least resistance. But it's just like my hike in Georgia, right? When I looked at you and I said, you won't ever be able to enjoy the view from Blood Mountain unless you just hike that trail. No cheating it, there's no cutting corners, there's no driving past it. You just gotta hike the difficult trail if you want the great reward. It's the same with my kids, and I know that. I know the truth that I won't be able to enjoy a deep, long-lasting connection with them that lasts until grandkids and great-grandkids, and I won't be able to train and raise them into healthy, mature adults. I won't be able to enjoy those great rewards if I take the path of least resistance, because the path of least resistance always ends with the least rewards. So where are we taking the path of least resistance? Jesus, when he says this, he's reminding us of everything else he's taught us in the Sermon on the Mount up to this point. He just recently had taught about marriage in the Sermon on the Mount. Let's use that for example. He's warning us. He's going, listen, you and I, all right, we will not be able to enjoy the reward of a healthy, intimate, lifelong marriage where you're 90 years old holding hands, walking on the beach in Florida, collecting seashells to paint or whatever. You're not going to be able to enjoy that unless you find a way to stay married. Which means when marriage gets difficult, and of course it will, we can't pack our bags. We have to lean into the difficulty and grow closer through it because the most difficult trails always lead to the greatest rewards, always. Marriage is just a great example of this. So I hope you can connect the dots even if you're not married. It's a great example because Jesus never promised marriage would be easier with him, ever. He promised it would be better, never promised easier. He also never promised it'd be harder without him. Marriage is just universally difficult for everyone. But the reason you and I set out on that trail in the first place is we thought there'd be something good on this trail. And so what Jesus does promise is that with him involved, he will help us walk the difficult trail to the point of enjoying the rewards, the mountaintop views of marriage. He says this will be good, but you gotta keep going. Lean in and don't take the path of least resistance. What does the path of least resistance look like in this? Well, it could look like a million things. Everything from, I'm tired and I don't want to connect with her tonight. Let's just turn on the TV and just not talk to each other. It's just easier. Path of least resistance. You drive far enough down that highway, then eventually you go, I'm not even fulfilled in this marriage anyway, but there is this new secretary at work, or there is this guy who's staring at me in the gym, and maybe they'll have what I'm looking for and I can get it easily and I can get it fast. And Jesus just goes, I love you, and so I'm here to tell you, I promise, that road will destroy you. It's like that song that the band played earlier. He's going, you can walk that road if you want. That is your choice. If you would rather walk that road, you can. You will end up walking it alone. Jesus is trying to take the culmination of everything that he's taught in his Sermon on the Mount up to this point. He goes, that road, if you walk that road, it's the narrow road, right? To have your heart narrowly focused on what Jesus says is good and right and true. And then with your heart in the right place, then you start to just do the right thing at work. even though it might not make you cutthroat enough to get the promotion you deserve. Or you do the right thing at school, even though you might not get the invite to the party you're looking for or whatever. Again, nothing to do with earning your way into heaven. You can't do it. You just put your faith in Jesus and then you're in. He's talking about a better life here and now. The reason he's instructing us to take the narrow road, to do the right thing, is because he promises it will lead to what you're looking for in the first place. It will lead to a better life. You may not have the raise in your paycheck. You may not be a member of the sorority that you were looking at or fill in the blank, but you will be able to sleep at night knowing you are a man or a woman of integrity who's narrowly focused on what Jesus says to be good, right, and true. And you're trusting his promise that this trail leads to a better life in the here and now. Which sounds like the greater reward? The promotion or that? And that is a question that you have to just honestly ask for yourself. I'm just here to tell the same thing that Jesus told people 2,000 years ago. It's a universal truth. It's at the end of the most difficult trails that we find the greatest rewards. And so the question I think we should ask ourselves is this: whether it's our marriage, kids, family, friends, job, time, money, whatever, where are we taking the path of least resistance? And do we want the greater reward enough to take the more difficult trail instead? That is the question that Jesus is asking us in his Sermon on the Mount. And in my opinion, here's the reason that Jesus has the total, absolute right to ask it of us. And this is because we worship a God who chose the path of most resistance for our sake. You know, we celebrated Easter a couple weeks ago. We celebrate the moment when Jesus walked the most difficult trail all the way to the end, and now we get to enjoy the rewards. That's what he wanted for us. He wants us to have freedom and forgiveness and grace, and so he walked the road of suffering all the way to the end. We have a God who knows from personal experience that the most difficult trails lead to the greatest rewards, and he's telling us from personal experience that is so worth it. This isn't about rules. It's not about earning your way into heaven. He wants us to actually experience the good life he talks about in the Sermon on the Mount. He wants us to actually experience the rewards that come from forgiving others or caring for others or building a healthy marriage and family or gaining freedom from manipulation, insecurity, fear, worry, hypocrisy, you name it. He wants us to actually have the abundant life he promised in the here and now. But if we want to experience it, we have to leave the path of least resistance. We have to leave the path of get whatever you want now and quickly. And we have to willingly choose the more difficult trail and trust in his promise that it leads to a better life. So are we willing to do that? Are we willing to take a look at parts of our life where we are on the highway and then skip it and go for the trail? The same question I'm asking is the question Jesus asks. What would you rather do? Let's pray. So God, I thank you for being honest with us. You're always honest with us. And your honesty is always good. And so, 2,000 years ago, you shared this with the crowd. Some guys were like, oh, that's gold. And they wrote it down, and we're still reading it to this day. And it's still gold. We thank you for being honest. You don't cut corners with us. You don't try and soften the truth. You just tell us the honest truth. You go, listen, that road is a highway. It will destroy you. I don't want that for you. I thank you for your honesty. God, I pray for confidence right now, not confidence in ourselves, but I pray for confidence in you and like trust in your promise that this narrow trail over here will actually lead to a better life in the here and now. Like my kids will get a better dad, Allie will get a better husband, my friends will get a better friend, these people will get a better pastor if I stay on this trail. You promise it leads to a better life. So I'm asking on behalf of all of us in all these different rooms and campuses to give us confidence in your promise. God, I pray that you reveal to us parts of our lives where we're on the wide road, the get it fast, get it now, get it cheap road. Reveal parts of our lives where we're on that highway, we don't even know it yet. But God, give us confidence in your promise and give us the strength that it's gonna take to narrow our focus on what you say to be good and right and true and walk that trail, because it will lead to the greater rewards. So God, I pray for confidence and I pray for strength, and I love you very much, and I'm thankful for everyone in this room right now. And I pray this in your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.